I firmly believe that entrepreneurship and innovation is the great equalizer of the world, that ideas can come from any person in any corner, no matter who they are and what the idea is about. Ideas are the game-changing force for everyone.
Greetings, leaders, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Leadership Is Podcast. I am your host, Jason Muhammad, founder of JM Leadership Development, and today we will be talking with Miss Emily Breedlove, transforming communities through entrepreneurship and innovation. What does that look like? How is that accomplished? This is Season 2, Episode 6. Emily Breedlove transforms communities through entrepreneurship and innovation. With over 15 years' experience, she is committed to fostering equitable economic opportunity across America by empowering regions through data-driven strategic planning, public and private partnerships, and leading-edge community advancement practices. Having worked her way from coast to coast, Emily is an economic development powerhouse, award-winning event producer, business accelerator, director, public relations specialist, and nationally recognized through leader in entrepreneurial ecosystem design. Thank you and welcome, Ms. Emily Breedlove.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So besides the wonderful portion of your resume that I was able,
I need to make it easier to read.
Yeah, well, it's everything is always a work in progress. And so, tell us some more about yourself. Who are you and what you do?
Well, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I was an entrepreneur before I ever even knew what that meant. The first person in my family to be an entrepreneur, I was always the oddball. But it's been a fun journey of, being someone who loves to start up different ventures. And so I've been either the founding member or a member of the founding team of 6 different startups, and learned a lot about myself and about business. But also along that journey, I started really recognizing the power of community and resource providers and leaders and tools that you need in order to really be successful at starting and running a company. And so I've had the honor of being able to kind of switch back and forth between being a founder, but also being a community leader and advocate in ecosystem development. And it's made for, I think, a kind of a unique journey that I'm not just an entrepreneur and I'm not just a resource provider. I'm kind of this weird combination of the two. And it's really taught me a lot about the different types of leadership, depending upon which room you're in, which table you're sitting at. Being the founder, it looks one way, and then being, part of a government agency or working for a university, leadership looks very different. Just, your capacity for risk and your commitment to the plan, and those worlds are they run parallel, but they're not the same.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, could you, tell us some more about this entrepreneurial ecosystem? Like what does that mean? I've never, myself, ever heard it, put that way. So what does that look like?
Sure. I mean, it's an ecosystem like every other way that you think of an ecosystem, like in biology and in the environment. That the entrepreneurial ecosystem is the way in which a community is brought to life to actively support entrepreneurship. And I think that it's also important to look at the different ways in which you even use the term entrepreneur, entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial. So I was I was the director of a program called the Certified Entrepreneurial Communities Program, where we would go into cities and towns and counties, and they would go through this about 12-month process of building together a team of representatives and then really mapping out their quote unquote ecosystem. And so it was always interesting because, we would start this process with having a group of people, everything from elected officials to the small business center director to people who work for banks, to actual founders and entrepreneurs. And we'd start by having them first define, what does entrepreneurial mean? When you
Mm.
hear that word, what do you associate with it? And what was always interesting was that it was pretty positive associations with even the concept of entrepreneurial, that people who've never started a company before in their life, they still really idealize the concept of what being entrepreneurial was. Everybody wanted to be a little bit entrepreneurial, which is awesome because you totally can be. I mean, the idea is that it's that you're really thinking outside the box, that you're coming up with new ways to solve problems, and that potentially those solutions can be businesses, standalone companies. And so the ecosystem is just all the things that support that entrepreneurial mindset and the potential for local companies to be spun up. It's the soft and the hard aspects of a community. So, how supportive is a community to just ideas, new ideas, thinking outside the box, coming up with new ways to solve problems? Is there more of a place that's supportive of innovation? Is it trustworthy? Is it open? Is it friendly? But also, the hard side to that of, is it easy to get funding to support your company? Are there networking opportunities? Are there co-working spaces? Can you find mentors and advisors? Are there accelerators and incubators? And can you go to the small business center to get classes? So is education a big part of it? All of those things, that swirling ball of energy, of resources, of motivation, that's what makes an ecosystem. And it's the communities that have a healthy, dynamic ecosystem, that it's all hands on deck, and that everyone in the community understands their role in that ecosystem, that they know at what point they engage, and what questions they answer, what tools they have to offer. But everything comes down to, at the end of the day, a healthy ecosystem comes down to clean and positive handoffs. That when a
Mhm.
founder shows up and they need help, no matter what door they knock on, if a community has a strong ecosystem, whoever is standing behind that door knows where they should go. And so that's when you're dealing with ecosystem builders, which are people like me.
Yeah.
Our job is to help not only map so that it's easy to navigate, but also work with those individuals and organizations so that they know where people belong, and they know their place in the ecosystem, and they know how to hand off appropriately. Because for an entrepreneur, for someone who's starting a business and they've got everything that they have tied up in that potential, they maybe have invested all their savings into this, that they've taken the leap of faith, and they don't have a backup plan, they don't have a job, they don't have all of this. For those entrepreneurs, time is money. And so when they're reaching out to their community, asking for help, and whoever they're talking to gets it wrong, and they send them to another organization, that then takes more time. And so it's, that's one of the big things that we're always working with communities on the ecosystem, is being right the first time, and saving that entrepreneur time ultimately saves them money, because then there's less back and forth, and there's less time waiting for them to get what it is that they need in order to make it work.
Yeah, that sounds truly trailblazing. That sounds awesome. So today's we're talking about transforming communities through entrepreneurship and innovation. So, what inspired you to be involved in that work of transforming communities through entrepreneurship and innovation?
Well, like I said, I've always been an entrepreneur. It's just been, it's, I eat, sleep, breathe, everything about it. It's just who I am. I couldn't not be that. Um, but I also, I started from a place of struggle. Of I was a small town, rural mompreneur. I had two small kids in a community that did not have access to a lot of resources. We didn't have reliable broadband. We didn't have a very engaged and dynamic ecosystem. And so when I first got started, it was really, really hard. It was hard for a small town mom to make it work. And so I had to learn really early on how to how to build partnerships and how to navigate this ecosystem, and make it happen. And then I was fortunate enough that through that experience, I was able to secure a position, that when I was able to work with the government on that. And so I went on as the director of entrepreneurship for an organization called the Advantage West Economic Development Commission, which they were a government agency that represented 25 counties of Western North Carolina. And I was an advocate on behalf of the entrepreneurs. And that was where I was able to lead the Certified Entrepreneurial Communities program and work with organizations. And so what was interesting was that, I went into that position having always just been an entrepreneur. I had never worked for the government. It was a risk for them to even bring me in, because I was very new. I didn't really fit the mold. But I was able to learn how this stuff happens. I learned that there is this whole network that exists above the businesses, that there's all these tools and people who are just paid to help us, that there are free resources, that the government pays a lot of people and a lot of organizations to support small businesses and entrepreneurship because we are such an important part of the American economy. And so it's learning that there was this whole other world basically, and learning that I was actually straddling between the two, and that I started to really embrace my role as the translator of, having a seat at the table with the government, with federal agencies, with state agencies, with local counties, with banks, and with investor networks, and all of these things. But also understanding the daily realities of what it took to be an entrepreneur and to run a business, being able to then show up with founders and with these companies and explain how this stuff works. I firmly believe that entrepreneurship and innovation is the great equalizer of the world, that ideas can come from any person in any corner, no matter who they are and what the idea is about. Ideas are the game-changing force for everyone. And so the more that we make ecosystems fertile and open and welcoming, the more that we allow people to transform their lives, but also transform the community through the merit of their ideas. That with all of these tools, anybody can take a great idea and turn it into something. And, I also firmly believe that we need a heck of a lot more ideas out there, and we need ideas that come from, a diverse body of people, that we can't just get the same ideas from the same group of people that are always included in the same conversations, because that's how we got to where we are today. And so really, really introducing this idea of redefining even the terminology of what innovation and entrepreneurship means, to make it more inclusive and welcoming to all people. The innovation is not necessarily about technology. Innovation is about solving a problem in a new way. And that anyone who has the ability to come up with a new solution that solves it more efficiently, or that pursues something in a better way, that is innovation, no matter what kind of company or business it's in. It could be at a restaurant or a salon, or, in science and engineering. It does not have to be as limiting as most people have thought. And so, I really am working hard on making sure that people are really redefining what that means for their community and opening doors for all to participate, and then creating an ecosystem that is more engaging and more welcoming, so that we can start really bringing out the ideas that we need more than anything else.
Yeah, that's awesome. You sound like you would have been the little girl on the block with the lemonade stand, but not only having the lemonade stand, but supplied the lemons to the other little, girls and boys who were trying to have lemonade stands. And
Right.
so, yeah,
I was
yeah,
the girl that was bulk buying lemonade or bulk buying lemons and
yeah,
then running a network of stands. Like I was pimping out the lemon stands.
yeah, exactly. And
Exactly.
that's
I mean,
exactly what
yeah.
I
I mean,
see in
once
my
you start
mind.
really thinking about, and that's another thing in tying even to entrepreneurship and innovation is explaining the concept of scale, and allowing that to be introduced into different industries so that people understand how to scale what they're doing. because that's also the game changer, right? Is to think
Yeah.
beyond just the one-to-one service.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. So, so tell me something as it relates to leadership and in the work that you're doing, right? So, what is your definition of leadership, and how can this mindset that you have can this mindset be taught to leaders, and how can they incorporate this into the culture of their companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think that leadership, everybody has their own flavor. Ultimately, it's based upon stepping into a role where you're guiding people towards something new, that you're creating a new experience, a new paradigm, that you're ushering in something that we are not currently in. I think
Mm,
that there's a lot of aspects of leadership that can be taught to an extent, because I can stand up there and I can teach all of these concepts to people, but at the end of the day, great leadership is practiced. And
yeah.
so it's really the individual taking the initiative of integrating these new habits, these new mindsets, these new tools that help really push them forward to become a better leader, to be more capable of empowering and equipping and educating other people, to create more of the future that they are trying to guide people towards. I think that leadership requires more than just um, being the person standing at the front of the line. It means that you have to see where you're taking people, and that you have to have the ability for them to trust you, but also for you to guide them there. And most leaders, the dirty secret, right, is that most leaders don't always know how they're going to get there, but they know they have to believe in where they're taking people, and
Yeah.
they have to trust that eventually together they'll figure it out.
Mm. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. So if you can give our audience three leadership tips, and I mean, dealing with the entrepreneurial
Mhm.
entrepreneur and entrepreneurship, if you want to, before you give us the tips, even what is the true difference between those two words? I mean, those three words, pardon me.
Yeah. Well, so it's the way in which the word is used, right? So the entrepreneur is the individual. That is the person who is being entrepreneurial often. The entrepreneur is the person who has turned it into a venture, right? So, and you'll see in the ecosystem that people will even self-identify that there's the small business owner and there's the entrepreneur. And that even that title, people will consciously choose, I'm a small business owner, I'm not an entrepreneur, or I'm an entrepreneur, I'm not a small business owner, right? And so
Yeah.
being the entrepreneur often means that there is an element of innovation, that you are um, that you're often thinking outside the box, that you're doing something a little different, a little riskier, a little more high paced. People who self-identify as a small business owner, that's also typically categorized as like a lifestyle business or brick and mortar business, that you see it more as that you're providing a service or a product that is consistent, is reliable, that sort of thing, that you don't necessarily identify as being someone who is an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial are all the traits that are associated with that, but may not necessarily be tied to someone who is running a business. So a lot of people who work in the ecosystem space, who work for the government or work for universities, they see themselves as entrepreneurial for very good reason. Entrepreneurial is the taking risk, thinking outside the box, being creative, um, finding solutions to problems, that sort of thing. And then entrepreneurship is the kind of the cluster wrapped around starting a business. It's the act of being entrepreneurial, right? So all of these are just different ways of talking about the same thing, just through a different lens. But so okay, so my three leadership tips that I would give, obviously they're going to be somewhat entrepreneurial. My
Yeah,
number
yeah,
one
and
thing.
I apologize, before you give
Oh yeah,
them,
go ahead.
just the statement that you just made, that's absolutely what I believe, is that leadership and entrepreneurship go hand in hand. In my audience, I have, some entrepreneurs or some small business owners, but then I also have, frontline managers or emerging leaders who are working for companies like shift leaders, team leads and that sort of thing. However, the entrepreneurial mindset in leadership, to me, with what you're saying, go hand in hand, because it's really all about accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And if a leader has that entrepreneurial mindset, right, they take accountability for their part in the company or their own, business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, and that's this new term has been coined called the intrapreneurial, right? The
Mm,
intrapreneur, where you're dealing with an I for intra versus
yeah.
an E for intra. And intrapreneurial is more, and it's also tied to, company culture, that you're dealing with professionals or staff members that are encouraged to be entrepreneurial from within an established company. So they may not necessarily be the C-suite or the founder, but the company really encourages them to be entrepreneurial, to have to think on their feet, to have to pivot, to have to come up with new solutions, to have to continually be moving, right, in their business. And that is becoming much more embraced in corporate culture, because they're seeing that it's making the company in general more nimble and more responsive to the environment, that they can move faster as an entire entity if they allow that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's dynamite, as they would say in the
Mm-hmm.
70s. That's good stuff. Good stuff. So yeah, I'm sorry. So yeah, if you can give us or our audience 3 leadership tips.
Absolutely. Okay. So the number one thing that I tell to all of my clients, no matter what they do, whether they're in business or, with a nonprofit or with the government, is the first thing is that you need to do the work that only you can do. And this is the reality is that, America has done such a great job of forcing us to silo ourselves, to pick a lane, right? Like they teach us that from middle school and high school, that we're already like picking our career path and picking our major of college, and then even once you start going into the job market, you start really defining yourself as, I am these 3 or 4 things. I am this kind of worker. I am this kind of leader. And the reality is that it's actually the combination of a lot of things that we would not even assume are tied to our career that make us a really significant person in any environment, right? Not even just leadership, but just a person. And this is one thing that we look at with the Camp Girl Boss program, which is a middle school leadership and entrepreneurship camp, is that we get the girls to start thinking about what really makes them who they are. And it's not just, the skills that they have or the industry that they're interested in. It's also that they're really great at communicating, or they're really passionate about the environment, or that they have a lot of endurance, and that they're aggressive and assertive and all of those things. It's actually the combination of all your experiences and all your passions and your vision for yourself, for your family, for your life. And it's how all of those things fit together and make you individually, uniquely equipped to do a certain thing on this planet. And that leadership is really about embracing that there are some things that you are uniquely equipped to do. And it may come from experiences that have nothing to do with your job. It may come from, having a troubled past that makes you so resilient and courageous in moments of chaos. And that, like, something from your childhood that may make you a fabulous leader. And so I'm always challenging my clients to look beyond just the runway in front of them that their career has cleared out for them, and start really asking the question, like, what is the work that only I can do? And I feel like that is, especially when you're looking at leadership, that's creating a more holistic look at what you're really capable of. So number 2, I would say, especially when you are someone like me that doesn't always fit the box, I'm a big dynamic personality. I am a disruptor at heart. I am always pushing back, and
Yeah.
coming up with new ways. And I now see that as being kind of a moral obligation for myself. But so my number 2 thing is to pick your battles. that this leadership is a long game, right? No matter what it is, if you tend to still be on this earth, you're still going for it. And so really being conscious and selective about where you place your energy and what you fight for. Because at the end of the day, no matter what work you do, whether you work for the government or you run your own company, no matter what it is, your greatest currency is relationships. It is the people in your network. It's the people who respect you and trust you, right? And learning how to invest your time and energy into the relationships that you have, and choosing wisely the battles that you fight, is going to make it so that you end up having stronger relationships that last longer.
Yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then my number 3 tip would be to build a really healthy relationship with your intuition, because leadership is easy until it's hard, and that we don't need leaders when things are good and easy. We need leaders when things are hard and confusing. And it's in those moments that you have to know how to listen to your gut, and how to that you've done the work. You know the things, you know your skill sets, you know your weaknesses, you know the places where you can show up. It's in those moments that you have to be able to make a quick decision. You have to make an impossible choice, because if everyone could make it, they would not need a leader. And so really wrestling with that and coming to terms with, what do I do when I don't know what to do? And how do I handle that? You know, it goes back to the very first thing that I said, that leadership becomes a practice, and that it's in the calm that you're able to work on those skill sets within yourself. Because when it's not calm, that's when you're going to need to be able to lean on it, and you're going to need to have the muscle memory of knowing how to navigate. Because the moment itself is going to be hard enough. Being underprepared for how to address that moment is going to make it impossible for you to lead with integrity. So Those would be my 3.
Wow, those are awesome. Those are awesome. So do the work only you can do, pick your battles, and build a healthy relationship with your intuition. I have never heard that said like that before. Build a healthy relationship with your intuition. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Emily.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Do you have any closing comments, and how can people, get your services and your contact info?
Sure. So the easiest way to find me is probably on LinkedIn, Emily Breedlove. And I'm always around. I'm happy to mentor and advise. I'm currently living in St. Louis, but I do work all over the country. So feel free to reach out.
Very good. Yeah, I look forward to having you on this podcast once again. And I'm actually going to reach out to you as well as it relates to my business of leadership development, have a discussion with you and bounce some ideas off you as well. From what I know, you're definitely one that a person wants to talk to as it relates to growing a business. And so thank you so much for your time, your talent, and your teaching with us today.
Thank you, Jason.
Are you promoting the right people into leadership positions? How do you know? How do you measure the outcomes, and are they the outcomes you're looking for? Please visit www.jmleadershipdevelopment.com. Again, www.jmleadershipdevelopment.com, and request a half-hour conversation to assess if we can address your leadership development needs. Oh, and by the way, always remember that leadership is influence and service.
Thank you for enjoying another episode of Leadership Is Podcast with our special guest, serial entrepreneur, Emily Breedlove. Now, here is something that I want you to know about her. Besides being a serial entrepreneur, right? In addition to that, her dynamic background as a serial entrepreneur has equipped her with an uncommon expertise in digital media production, corporate and government relations, community resource mapping, and multi-state campaigns, which makes her an invaluable asset to any growth-oriented organization. So thank you so much, Miss Emily Breedlove, for your time, talent, and your teaching on the transforming communities through entrepreneurship and innovation. She gave us 3 excellent leadership tips. Number 1, do the work only you can do. As a leader, it is not a good idea or a good look to delegate out the work that you are responsible for, right? You can delegate out certain tasks that help to support your work, but you can never delegate responsibility. So making sure that you do the work that only you can do. Number 2, pick your battles. Pick your battles. I had in season 2, episode 4, Miss Robin Funston, who was dealing with leadership and team dynamics. And in that, she is what is called a conflict resolution specialist. And she talked about, how to solve conflict and, when to pick your battles and how to pick your battles, so which is a good, excellent leadership tip here given to us by Miss Emily Breedlove. Pick your battles. And the third one she gave us was build a healthy relationship with your intuition. Build a healthy relationship with your intuition. Now, I found that one there. That one is special, right? Because I've never heard it said that way before, is building a healthy relationship with your intuition. Many times we have ignored that gut feeling that we have about this or about that, right? But building a healthy relationship with your intuition is an excellent tip. So thank you so much, Miss Emily Breedlove, for that. Here at JM Leadership Development, our primary goal is to assist your company with identifying and developing your leadership bench. If you would like to have a conversation about us doing a presentation or keynote at your next event, or about your leadership bench, including helping you develop one, please do not hesitate to reach out to us via email, info@jmleadershipdevelopment.com, or give us a call, 828-333-7234, and we will respond promptly. In the meantime, please subscribe and give us a good review for this podcast on many podcast platforms, including Apple, Google, Spotify, and more under the name Jason A. Muhammad /Leadership Is. You also may follow us on social media. Twitter is @LeadershipJM. Facebook and Instagram is JM Leadership Development. And always remember, leadership is influence and service.